I am a forensic chemist examiner within the laboratory division of the FBI.
And how long have you been employed by the FBI in that capacity?
I've been employed with the FBI for a little over 15 years, since 1996, and I've been a forensic chemist examiner since December of 1999.
What is your educational background prior to entering the FBI?
I have 2 Bachelor of Science degrees, one in forensic science and one in chemistry. I have a Master's of Science degree in chemistry, and I have a PhD in chemistry.
And have you had continuing education with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
This time, have you ever been qualified as an expert to testify in the field of forensic chemistry?
Yes, I have.
And can you tell us just a rough approximation of how many times that would have occurred?
Approximately 12 to 15 times.
And would that been in just federal jurisdictions, state jurisdictions, or a little of both?
Mainly in federal jurisdictions, but I have on occasion testified in state court.
At this time, Your Honor, I would submit Dr. Rickenbach as an expert in the area of forensic chemistry.
What says the defense?
No objections.
Doc will be accepted as expert witness in the area of forensic chemistry. You may proceed.
Doctor, in August of 2008, did you receive some items for examination in reference to a victim by the name of Caylee Marie Anthony?
Yes, I did.
All right. I want to show you a few items and ask if you recognize them. Earlier today during the break, did we examine these items in evidence?
Yes, we did during the break.
Reference to State's Exhibit IM for identification, did you examine this? Did you recognize it?
Yes, I did. I recognize my initials on the seal over the bag.
And do you recognize that as an item you examined in this case?
Yes, I do.
This time you want to move into evidence, State's Exhibit IM.
What says the defense? There being no objections to be received in evidence, the state's numbered
138.
Did you also, during the break, take a look at State's Exhibit for identification IM?
Yes, I did.
And you recognize that as one of the items that was submitted for your evaluation?
Yes, I do. I recognize my initials on that piece of evidence.
This time you want to move to evidence, State's Exhibit IM for identification.
No
What?
objections.
It will be received in evidence, the state's numbered
139.
And let me show you State's Exhibit IL for identification. Did you examine this during the break?
Yes, I did.
And you recognize this item as one of the items submitted to you for your evaluation?
Yes, I recognize my initials on the tape seal.
This time, Your Honor, the State will move to evidence, State's Exhibit IL.
be received in evidence, the state's numbered
140.
And let me show you State's Exhibit IO. Did you examine that earlier during the break?
Yes, I did.
And do you recognize that as one of the items submitted for your evaluation in this case?
Yes, I do. I recognize my initials on the heat seal.
This time you want to move into evidence, State's Exhibit IO.
what says the defense?
No objections, Your Honor.
It'll be received in evidence as
Exhibit number 141.
Next, I'll show you State's Exhibit HS for identification, and that's to be recognized. If you look at that during the break, you recognize that.
Yes, I did. I recognize my initials on the tape seal and on the box.
All right, let me just, since I'm here, also show you IK. Did you look at that over the break? You recognize that as something submitted to you in this case?
Yes, I do. I recognize my initials over the heat seal.
This time, you want to move to evidence State's Exhibit HS and IK.
No objections.
they will be received in evidence as states numbered.
HS will become State's Exhibit number 142, and IK will be State's Exhibit number 143.
Sir, were you asked to inspect these items to determine whether you could detect the presence of chloroform?
Yes, I was.
What type, did you use the same type of analysis on each of the items?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Could you just explain to the jury briefly what type of analysis you did and how you did it?
I did a visual examination after opening each item individually and noted any characteristics about the items. I looked at them for any staining, just to try to find where I should sample from. I then took samples, placed them into sealed vials, and did a process called headspace gas chromatography on them.
Let's take them one at a time. Let's start with Q22. What is item Q22? According to your note, and you can refer to your report if you need to.
Do you have a copy of my report?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I do.
It's the evidence number with the question number.
Okay, let me just pull it up. Formerly IK, which is there it is. Yeah, we'll start with Q22 if you need to. Just let us know. What is item Q22?
Q22 was a piece of fabric reported to be a piece of the spare tire cover.
And did you submit that? Yes.
What is the state's exhibit number?
The exhibit and evidence number is 143.
Okay.
All right. Now, just take us through what you did with that item as an example of the other examinations.
I opened the can, observed the material inside, took a cutting based on if there were any stains present, put it in a sealed glass vial, and submitted it to headspace gas chromatography analysis.
Now, when you opened the can, did you detect an odor?
Yes, I did.
How do you describe that odor in your report, or how would you describe that odor?
We approach.
You may. You may proceed.
Thank you. You were telling us about your evaluation of your Q22 that I've previously mentioned, the state exhibit. What was the result of your examination of that item?
That residues of chloroform were identified on that specimen.
discuss State's Exhibit 141, which is see what your Q number. I'm trying to see what the Q number is on. Which is your Q44. And what is that item?
Q44 was a piece of fabric material reported to be a piece of a spare tire cover.
And did you subject that to the same analysis that you discussed as to the other exhibit?
Yes, I did.
And what was the result of that analysis?
That residues of chloroform were identified on specimen Q44.
All right. Let me show you State's Exhibit in Evidence 142. That is your Q45. Is that correct?
Yes, it was.
And did you subject that to the same instrumental examination? The same instrumental examination that you referred to as the other exhibits?
Yes, I did.
And what was the result of that examination?
That residues of chloroform were identified on specimen Q45.
Take that back from you. All right. State's Exhibit in Evidence 139. Would you describe this as the? Do you describe this as the spare tire cover, something to that effect?
Is that specimen Q23 in my?
I'm sorry. Yes, your Q23, which is our Exhibit in Evidence 139.
Yes.
And did you subject that to the same instrumental examination as the others that we discussed?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us, either from your notes or from recollection, what portion of this you tested?
I can look at it. I'm not sure. It's hard to write on this material, but I believe it's that fabric portion right here.
So just
Yeah, not the cardboard. Yes.
and again, the same instrumental examination as the others.
Yes, I did.
And what was the result of that examination?
For specimen Q23, residues of chloroform were identified.
Now, the last two items, which are your Q24 and 25, let's start with our Exhibit in Evidence 140, which is your Q24. What is that item?
The Q24 is a piece of fabric material reported to be the left side of trunk liner.
And which side of the trunk liner?
It's reported to be the left side of the trunk liner, specimen Q24.
The left side of the trunk liner. And did you use the same instrumental examination on that you did on the other items?
Yes, I did.
And what was the result of that testing of the liner?
That chemical consistent with chloroform was detected on that item.
What is the difference between a finding of chemicals consistent with chloroform and a finding of residue of chloroform?
In order to identify that chloroform was present or residues of chloroform were present, we used two different techniques or two techniques in order to get positive results. And at that point, they reinforced each other, and therefore I'm confident to say that chloroform was identified. In the case where it's consistent with chloroform, only one technique gave a result of chloroform. The other technique did not detect chloroform.
So consistent with, but not an identification.
That's correct.
And lastly, your Q25, our exhibit in evidence 140, did you use the same instrumental examination on that you did on the others?
Specimen Q25 reported to be the right side of trunk liner, and yes, I did the same.
And what were the results?
That chemical chloroform, consistent with chloroform, was detected on that item.
So basically, were the results on the left and right side of the liner the same? That is consistent with chloroform, but not conclusive?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
May it please the court. Mr. Ashton. Good morning, Dr. Rickenback.
Good morning.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
I want to talk a little bit get a little more in depth about your examinations. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury a little bit more about the GCMS?
The GCMS, the gas chromatography mass spectrometry instrument, is an instrument that we use, or that is used for separation of chemicals and for the identification of chemicals.
And how sensitive is this gas chromatograph mass spectrometer?
It depends, but if certain types, the ones in particular that we use, can be very, very sensitive.
So basically, you can pick up chemicals that are in, like, water?
I can detect chemicals out of the matrix of water, yes.
And any type of, it basically breaks things down how far, as far as sensitivity is concerned?
It can break it down into that very, very small amounts of chemicals can be detected using a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer system.
And then you did a second test for the flame ionization. Is that, I know I'm butchering that a little bit, the second test that you conducted.
Yes, the second test is very similar to the first test. It just uses a different detector system. The first system uses a mass spectrometer to detect. The second system is, again, the headspace gas chromatography, same technique as the first, except it uses a different a detector to identify or detect the chemicals that come off, that are separated out of the gas chromatograph.
Now, you told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about residues of chloroform found on the Q22 portion. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell them what you mean by residues of chloroform?
Chloroform is usually found in a liquid state. And the items of evidence that I got are obviously, they're solid material. And so there was no liquid on those items. But when subjected to very sensitive techniques, the chloroform that was identified in those items can be driven off and detected by the instrument. And therefore, since it's not a liquid, it's really in very, very small amounts. It's residues of chloroform on these materials.
Okay. So they were found in very, very small amounts.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you can find chloroform in any number of household items, correct?
It has been detected in household cleaning agents and other items, yes.
Including detergents?
That is correct.
And you can even find chloroform in water, right? Drinking water?
It depends on the drinking water, yes, but if it's present in an amount that the instrument can detect, yes, you can detect it.
And you can also find it in chlorine from a swimming pool, can you not?
I have no firsthand knowledge. I've never analyzed the chlorinated products like water from swimming pools for chloroform, so I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Do you know if someone threw a bathing suit after going swimming in the trunk of a car, whether that might generate chloroform?
Objection, hypothetical based on facts not in evidence.
Sustain.
Sir, do you know what other products chloroform could be found in, like soda?
I've heard no firsthand knowledge that chloroform is in soda products.
Okay. Do you have you any knowledge in other items other than cleaning items that chloroform could be found in?
From my personal experience, usually it's a cleaning product that I have found chloroform in. But I mean, there may be other items that have chloroform that I haven't personally analyzed.
And those would be found in very, very low amounts, such as what you found in this case.
Objection assumes a fact not in evidence.
Overruled.
The items that were consistent with cleaning products that I've detected chloroform were in very small amounts, similar to these items, yes.
Okay. Now, can you explain to the... With the court's permission, can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what a chromatogram looks like?
A chromatogram is a graphic output from an instrument, a gas chromatograph, that is a graph of the signal coming from the instrument based on if a chemical is present or not, or something that's coming off of the instrument, the chemicals that are separated. If it's detected, it'll go up in intensity, the plot will go up, and on the x-axis as it goes across, the time that it's taking for the chemicals to come off the column to be separated.
May the witness stand down, Your Honor, to demonstrate to the jury.
Witness may stand down.
Dr. Rickenback, can you give him show us a raw example of what a chromatogram might look like? Perfect, thank you. Everybody see that okay? Okay, Dr. Rickenbach, when you do run a sample through the GCMS, does the item tell you how much chloroform is present?
In a quantitative amount telling you exactly how much, no, it does not.
Okay. And there's a difference between what is called a quantitative analysis and a qualitative analysis. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what the difference is?
A qualitative analysis is a type of analysis where you're just trying to identify or detect the substance that you're analyzing. In this case, just chloroform. You're not giving really any information in your final report as to how much is there. If you were going to give a report as to how much of a substance is in a certain sample, that would be both a qualitative, identifying the component, and then also giving a numeric amount, which would be a quantitative.
So to break it down, qualitative tells you it's there. Yes?
Yes, that's correct.
And quantitative tells you how much.
That's correct.
Now you can't just look at a graph and tell what the quantity is, correct?
You can't tell an exact quantity. You can get some information based on relative amounts, but based on a qualitative analysis, you really wouldn't give a number.
Okay. And in fact, looking at it that way without running what's called a standard is not a very good way of, or a scientific way of doing this, correct? Finding out a quantitative amount.
If you were going to report out an actual amount, just doing an analysis without a standard or without the appropriate technique for quantitative analysis would not be a good way.
Correct. Now, when you analyzed these samples, you had an internal standard, is that correct?
I analyzed the samples in dual mode, if you will. I analyzed them twice. I took one cutting that was without an internal standard, and then another cutting that had an internal standard, and ran them together at the same time.
And that's how you were able to determine that they were at very, very, very low amounts.
Not with the internal standard, no.
Okay, how exactly were you able to determine that they were at very, very low?
With every analysis, it's appropriate to run what's called a negative control and a positive control. A negative control would be no sample, just to show that your instrument doesn't have the compound of interest somewhere in its system. So you make sure that the result should be negative. And then at the end of the analysis, you run what's called a positive control to make sure that the instrument is working properly so that you can detect the substance that you're looking for, in this case chloroform, appropriately. And so at the end of the analysis, I ran a positive control of chloroform, a chloroform standard that I made up myself. And based on the response of a known amount of chloroform that I analyzed, the chloroform that came out of the specimens was significantly less than the amount that I knew I had put into the instrument.
Okay. And it wasn't overwhelming amount of chloroform, was it?
On the specimens?
Yes.
It was significantly less than not the internal standard, the positive control that I analyzed.
And it wasn't the most chloroform you'd ever seen in 20 years, was it?
It was not the most chloroform I've seen in 20 years, no. And it's not what you would call shockingly high levels of chloroform, would it? No, it's not.
Okay. Now, I know with the cues and the identification letters, we get a bit confused. I want to break it down if we can as to what item you tested and what you ended up getting. The Q22 is the left trunk liner, correct?
It's reported as a piece of the spare tire cover.
Okay, spare tire cover. And this is the one that you found residues of chloroform.
Residues of chloroform were identified on that specimen, yes.
And again, when we say residues, we're talking about very low levels.
Significantly lower levels than the positive control, yes.
Q23 was what, sir?
Q23 was reported to be the spare tire cover.
So it was another portion of the spare tire cover?
I think it's the entire, I'm not sure about the whole tire cover. It's that item right there.
It's just the second, you ran a test on another area of the spare tire cover.
Of a area on the cover, yes. It's
Okay.
not the entire cover.
So just prevent from writing that again, I'll just do one of these. And this was also significantly lower than your positive control at low levels.
That's correct.
Now, what are the other items from the trunk that you tested?
They were specimen Q24, reported to be the left side of trunk liner. Q25 reported to be the right side of the trunk liner.
Okay, let's start off with Q24. What were your results with this? Was this consistent with chloroform?
That a chemical consistent with chloroform was detected on that item.
And when you say consistent with, you mean one of the tests detected it, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that would still be at these low levels. correct?
That's correct.
And the second method didn't even pick it up.
That's correct.
So it's 1 out of 2 tests. And that's when you say it's consistent with.
That's correct.
That phrase consistent with is a pretty tricky phrase, right? You have to explain it?
Yes.
Okay. Q25 was the right trunk liner?
Q25 was reported to be the right side of trunk liner.
And this was also consistent with, right?
That a chemical consistent with chloroform was detected. Yes.
And that's because you had the one test that was at very low levels and the second test that didn't even pick it up.
That is correct.
Now, what other items did you test from the car?
Item Q44 was reported to be a piece of the spare tire cover.
And what were the results of that?
That chloroform, residues of chloroform was identified on that item
At the low levels.
at significantly lower levels than the positive control. Yes.
Any other items that you tested from the car?
Specimen Q45 reported to be a piece of the spare tire cover.
And that was the same results as Q44
Yes, that residues of chloroform were identified.
at significantly lower levels than your positive control.
Yes.
What else did you test from the car?
I'm not sure what, I have tested other items, but I'm not sure if they came from the car or where they came from. But on this submission, this batch of submission, those are the only pieces of evidence that I analyzed.
Did you test the steering wheel cover of the car?
You may. Objection sustained.
Doctor, I just want to conclude with these levels of, I guess, residue levels of chloroform that were found and tested are equal to what you might find in a common cleaning product, is it not, sir?
Yes, from my experience, those levels have been detected in substances that have been used for cleaning products, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Redirect.
Did you find any other substances that were consistent with cleaning products in your evaluation?
I'm sorry, in evaluation of what exactly?
Of the samples? Was there anything else about the evaluation that would have indicated these were cleaning products?
I was specifically tasked with looking just for chloroform, so I really didn't do an analysis for cleaning products on these items.
All right. So let's talk, you talked to counsel about words like low, very low, residue. Those are all sort of vague comparative terms, correct? I mean, low as opposed to high is sort of depending on your perspective, correct?
They're subjective terms, yes.
Okay. Have you ever been called upon in your career to test a solid dry object for chloroform?
Before this, I can't recall ever specifically just looking for chloroform, no.
your other experiences have always been in looking for chloroform in liquid form.
I have never really had an experience where something was submitted in a liquid form just looking for chloroform. However, there have been unknown liquids that I've analyzed using this technique where chloroform was identified.
Were those like product tampering kind of investigations?
Yes, that's the type of case. Product tampering or just general unknown analysis where they don't know what the substance is.
So what might be a high or low amount of chloroform in a carpet sample? Would you really have much of a perspective on that?
I would have nothing really to reference. We have, in order to answer that question appropriately, you'd want to do some control studies and spiking carpet samples with chloroform or whatever you're looking for and doing a validation kind of study.
Now, with reference to State's Exhibit 139 in evidence, the spare tire cover, how did that come to you?
It came to the chemistry unit through the normal operation of our laboratory through our evidence control unit.
Let me rephrase. How was it packaged?
Cross, rather.
Overall,
How was it packaged?
I'm sorry, that's specimen Q23?
Yeah, the trunk liner. How was it packaged?
That was found inside a box.
All right. Inside a cardboard box like the one we have in front of us here.
That's correct.
What effect would that packaging have on the levels of a volatile substance like chloroform on an object like this?
overall,
Based on the properties of chloroform, it would allow chloroform to leak out. It's not an airtight container.
Were you, in fact, surprised that you got any chloroform off of this object?
Yes, I was.
Speculation.
overall,
And explain to the jury why you were surprised that you got anything off that.
When I was initially tasked with doing this type of analysis, chloroform is a volatile substance, and it doesn't stay around very long under normal conditions that I use. Having an object come in like this package like that to detect for chloroform, I was very surprised to even get a result for chloroform.
Is that because you would have expected the chloroform to have volatilized,
Yes, volatilized and not been detected.
but yet you were still able to detect chloroform even on that unsealed object?
Yes, I was.
Now, rather than use high, low, there are actual numbers that we can apply to some of these issues about the amounts of chloroform. General numbers, are there not?
The numbers that you can compare to are the numbers of the intensity of the peak that on the graph when you get a peak, the height or the area of the peak. You can compare my positive control, the known amount of chloroform that I added to one sample versus the amount of chloroform that you would have detected on another object.
And that is basically what you're referring to as not a completely quantitative analysis, but sort of an idea of how much is there based on that comparison. Is that correct?
Yes, it would not be appropriate to say that would be a quantitative analysis, but you can get an idea, yes.
Now, the control, I think the internal standard, or was it the positive control, that you mixed? You said you mixed a control of chloroform, correct?
The positive control was a known amount of chloroform.
And you mixed that to a certain concentration, is that correct?
That is correct.
And what was that concentration?
In our percentage, it's 0.01% in water.
Can you translate that into parts per million?
That would correlate to approximately 100 parts per million.
Okay. 100 ppm, parts per million. Right. So that is the standard against which you compare your test results in determining a general idea of how much there is, correct?
I don't use it to determine how much there is. I just used it as, so I wouldn't put too much on or I wouldn't put too little in the instrument. It's just an amount that I use to detect the qualitative positive control.
But when you're referring to getting some general idea of the quantity by comparing the known to the control, that's what you talked about, this 100 ppm.
Yes, initially this is a qualitative analysis, but later on I was asked to give some kind of indication about quantity, and this is the only really way you can kind of get an idea of the amounts.
Just to be fair, this is a very rough estimate, correct?
That's correct.
So as to your Q22, which is a piece of the spare tire cover that was in a can, is that correct?
Yes, it was in a can, airtight can.
What does it being sealed in a can, why is that a better way of keeping something than putting it in a box?
For this type of analysis, where you're trying to analyze for a volatile substance in a very small amount and residue amounts, submitting the evidence in a heat-sealed container, such as this unlined metal can, is the appropriate way to do it.
All right. Now, as to Q22, are you able to do a rough percentage of how much chloroform there was that you found in the sample as compared to the standard control?
I would be hesitant to put a number or percent. I'm more comfortable with just saying that it's compared the height of the peaks or the area of the peak compared to my positive control, it's significantly less.
But you did prepare a rough percentage, did you not?
When asked in future conversations about can I give some idea of percentages, it's not the appropriate way to do it in forensic science, but I did give a percentage.
What is the general range of the percentage of the standard of Q22 to the standard?
I gave you that information. I don't have the information in front of me.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
If you need to reference that.
based on the data that I had submitted and based on the area counts and the height counts, this information has not been peer reviewed or tech reviewed. It's just a conversation that he wanted. It's 5% based on the comparison of the positive control.
And again, this is a very rough estimate, correct?
Yes,
So the amount of chloroform was somewhere in the neighborhood of 5% of the control, which was 100 parts per million.
the 5% is what I calculated. I can't say for certainty what the actual amount is.
That's fine. How about Q23?
It's approximately 0.1%.
0.1%. And Q23 is the actual unsealed spare tire cover.
Yes, that is correct.
So would it be fair to say that the sealed container contained much greater level of chloroform than the unsealed spare tire cover?
For the specimen Q22,
Right.
it did, but there were other items that were
Right.
submitted under sealed.
Let's go on to those. I'm going to skip 224 and 25 because you said those were just consistent with chloroform, correct?
Q24 and Q25 were consistent with, they were
Those
detected.
are the trunk liners. Okay, we'll skip over those. How about Q44? Was that also carpet sample, a sample in a sealed container?
Yes, it was.
And again, what is the rough percentage on that?
The rough percentage is approximately 1%, as compared to the positive control.
As compared to the positive control. Okay. How about Q45?
It's approximately 0.2%.
So So the highest concentration, again, with this rough area of estimating, is on the Q22 sealed sample in a can.
Yes. However, you have to take into account that the amount that I sampled, that I actually cut out, was not the same. I didn't make sure that each amount of sample that I cut between the different specimens was exactly the same. So you're going to have, if I took a bigger cutting on Q22 and a smaller cutting on Q45, and they had the same amount of chloroform on them, because I cut more out of one specimen, I'm going to find more in the sample. So it's a very, it's not the best way to relate these numbers.
Whatever the amount of chloroform actually is in the sample, would the chloroform in that sample, in the cans, have evaporated prior to it getting put in the can?
It's possible.
If this trunk were left open for, say, 6 or 7 hours, then sealed, and then a few weeks later, this sample of chloroform, this sample of trunk liner was taken, would you expect the chloroform amount to be the same when the sample was taken as it was 2 weeks before the car was aired out?
Objection, Judge. Gives a hypothetical.
Outside of cross-examination.
Overruled.
Just based on the properties of chloroform.
Based on the properties of chloroform, being that it's a very volatile chemical, if it was into an open atmosphere, I would expect less to remain on the items than if it was in a closed container.
So would you, I think we've gone far enough with that. If these figures accurately reflect the amount of chloroform in the sample, would that add up to the low parts per million range, if it's accurate?
Yes.
All right, now, other than testing for chloroform in liquids, have you ever experienced testing for chloroform in air samples?
No, I have not.
Would you have any knowledge about what is significantly high or low in an air sample?
Objection, Judge. Goes outside.
Scope of cross.
Overruled.
No, I have no firsthand knowledge of analysis of air samples.
So the context in which you answered the question about high, low, shocking, that's in the context of your evaluation of liquid samples containing chloroform.
Or in this case, residual samples, they're not non-liquid.
I mean, prior to this one, it would have been liquid samples.
Judge.
I'm going to object. This is outside the scope and highly misleading.
Overruled. She did.
She did not hear it.
Did you? Highly misleading.
Outside the scope and highly misleading. Okay. Overruled. Next question, Mr. Ashton.
I guess my point is, you're in answering the questions of the defense counsel, they're from the context of your prior experience, mostly testing for chloroform in liquids, correct?
Yes.
No further questions?
Recross.
Doctor, you testified that doing an estimate like this and trying to determine the quantity of chloroform is not appropriate in forensic science. Is that correct?
Yes, to give a formal amounts of a compound, doing it this way is not the correct way to do it.
And that's because you don't want to attempt to give anything that would mislead a jury.
Objection. Counsel's commentary, may we approach?
No, overruled. You can answer the question if you can.
No, I would not want to give an impression of amounts, specific amounts within these samples, because it's not appropriate to even give specific amounts based on the techniques that I used.
Because as a scientist, you want to be precise,
Yes, that's true.
especially when testifying in a court of law.
Yes.
Now, you testified that you don't have any experience in collecting chloroform from a solid, I guess, a piece of carpet or any other solid object.
Other than what I did in this case, before that, I've never tried to analyze for chloroform in carpet samples, no.
So trying to guess how much chloroform would be there versus not would be nothing more than a guess, would it not?
Trying to determine how much is there is not the correct way to do it, qualitatively.
And qualitatively determining whether something is sent in a box or a can, since you have no experience in this type of testing, that too would also be speculation.
Well, on packaging, I have firsthand knowledge, and based on my experience with chemistry, the way that evidence is packaged, I do have knowledge about that and how it should be appropriately packaged.
Well, maybe I posed the question poorly, but to give a quantitative amount and to estimate quantitatively as to how much, that would be speculation.
Yes.
I have no further questions. Thank you, sir.
You may?
I want the jury to understand, if no legitimate information can be obtained about the quantity of chloroform, how is it possible to answer defense counsel's question that it's similar to what's in cleaning products?
Judge, that's outside the scope of my.
Recross. I would object.
Overruled.
I think I can answer the question not based on quantitative, but on qualitative analysis.
Okay, go ahead.
That if we can detect chloroform in cleaning products, it's, you can detect it in these items, and it's just the amounts are compared to the positive control.
Okay, so when you said that it's similar to the amount in cleaning products, you simply meant by that it's detectable.
That's correct.
So when you answered counsel's question, that's all you meant was simply that it was detectable.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. Nothing further.
All right. Okay, witness may be excused. Thank you, doctor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Subject to recall, Your Honor. Yes.
You may proceed.
Good morning. Please tell the members of the jury how you are employed.
With the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I'm currently assigned to Specialized Patrol, the K-9 unit.
How long have you been with the Orange County Sheriff?
A little over 17 years, since 1994.
And you mentioned that you are in specialty patrol with the K-9 unit. What does that mean?
I'm a K-9 handler. I currently handle a German Shepherd, a full-service dog, and have worked a dog since 2001.
So for the last 10 years or so, you've been exclusively handling canines for law enforcement purposes.
Yes, ma'am.
What sort of training or education did you receive that initially qualified you for that position?
I cross-trained with the K-9 unit because I had interest to go into the K-9 unit prior to interviewing or actually going into the unit. Cross-training meaning I went over there and watched them work dogs. I caught dogs, talked to them about working dogs. And then I transferred there in 2001.
All right. So prior to your transfer, did you actually have a dog that you trained with, or was that sort of an education process for you?
I received a dog in 2001 because when I went into the unit, I went in as a part-time handler. And then a couple months after I did my training, I went into as a full-time handler because I went in as a part-time bloodhound handler originally.
Now, you train not independently of the dog, correct?
Correct.
Right. So when you first go into this unit, what sort of training is there for you? And you indicated your initial assignment was with a bloodhound.
Correct. It was scent discrimination. Man trailing is the first school I went to with my assigned dog with the sheriff's office.
Okay. And when we're talking about bloodhounds, we're speaking of dogs that will track specific individuals, correct?
Correct.
So how long is that sort of training?
That training is usually 5 weeks long. It's 3 weeks in a classroom and 2 weeks in the field. And then you have your proficiency test at the end of those 5 weeks.
Was this Canine Garrett,
Yes.
the first bloodhound or first dog that you worked with at the Orange County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Aside from the initial training period that was completed, did you do follow-up training with this dog?
Yes.
What would that consist of?
We have a minimum requirement of training that we do per month. With Garrett, it required a minimum of 2 tracks a month, training tracks a month. A trainer or an evaluator or a supervisor would come out and watch your dog quarterly to make sure your dog was working correctly.
So how long did you work with Canine Garrett?
I believe it was around 10 or 11 months until we had to put him down.
After that point, did you get another canine assignment?
Yes. Then I received my second dog, which was Ike, another bloodhound.
Right. So did you train Ike?
Yes.
Okay, what did that consist of?
Same thing. We did the scent discrimination, man tracking, man trailing. Scent discrimination basically is you teach him to learn the odor of what you sent him on. If I sent him on an individual shoe of one person and there's 3 people in the classroom, he has to go to that one person correctly before he can move to the next stage.
How long did you work with Canine Ike?
Until I gave him to another handler years later. And I believe that would have been somewhere in 2004 or 2005.
Now, at some point in time, did you have multiple dogs that you were training?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In different things?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in addition to Ike, did you have another dog?
Yes.
What was that?
In 2002, I received a German Shepherd from a breeding program. His name was Bones, and his specialty were human remains. He was a cadaver dog, single purpose.
Okay. Explain to us what that is.
Single purpose dog means he has one job and one job only. Along with his obedience that he's trained, he's taught to detect human decomposition, specifically cadavers. We go through approximately 160 hours specialty training in that. Then the dog's certified in the proficiency of working, and then we can actually be deployed in the field. I was chosen for that after the 9/11 towers because the 2 dogs that we did have were converted over to EOD dogs. So
What
we
is
didn't
that?
have one. EOD dogs. EOD dog is an explosive dog. We needed more bomb dogs at the time. So they were converted over, and then I became the next person in line, and then I worked the 2 dogs, the German Shepherd and the Bloodhound.
Ike and Bones.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, what is involved in training a single-purpose dog for human remains detection? When I imagine that the training is different than what you had undergone with Garrett and Ike.
Correct. You go through an imprinting stage. First, you have an introduction to the odor to see if the dog will be okay with the odor. You introduce the dog to the odor. And then you do an imprinting stage where you just constantly take the dog straight to odor. And when he goes to odor, you train him for what you would like him to do at his final alert. If you choose to make your dog sit at the odor, at the source, when he locates what you're training him to do, then when you go to source at the imprinting stage, you just take him to it and tell him sit, and then you reward him. And after that stage, then you start him into searching. For instance, if you have cans and your odor is in one can, you would put out multiple cans. And then you would give him his command, and you would have him check the cans. And it's his job not to pass the correct can. And you reinforce that with a sit. And then he gets his toy.
All right.
And his handler prays.
So when you refer to something as an alert, is that the dog's indication to you that they've detected the scent that they have been imprinted on and trained on?
A final trained alert is when he does, if you trained him to do a sit or you trained him to do a down at odor. An alert, I would define an alert as any body behavioral change that I recognize that he does when he is in odor and working the odor.
That's different than the final trained alert that you had mentioned?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The final trained alert is,
When he has worked to source and does his, we teach him to work to source.
what does that mean?
If I may. If my water bottle is the source of the odor and it's coming out and funneling down, if the dog is working from this side of the monitor, you would see his body behavioral change when he works in, whether it's his breathing pattern or his walking or his lifting his nose, he's working into odor. The wind's coming from this direction. You would see him start to bracket. He would work the odor back and forth and work it to source. This constant time here, by training him and working so many odors with him, you would know that he's in odor and he's alerting to the odor, but he hasn't gotten to the source yet. So he would work to source, get to here, and then give me my final trained alert. If it was a sit, he would go to a sit. That's the best way I could explain.
All right. So let me see if I understand. Once the dog detects the odor, as the handler who has trained with the dog, you can see that there's a behavioral change.
Absolutely.
Then when the dog works to the source or as close as possible to the source, it's your expectation that the dog will then give a final trained alert.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you train Bones to proceed in this fashion?
Yes.
What was Bones' final trained alert?
His final trained alert was a sit.
Sit.
Yes, ma'am.
What sort of, I know you used water as a demonstrative aid, but what sort of aids were used to imprint bones before he was actually used in casework?
In the imprinting stage
Certainly.
or the whole training stage?
We can start with imprinting and then move through training.
In the imprinting stage, we used mostly the rags with decomp, human decomp, rags that had been soaked up with the chest cavities, in the chest cavity of a cadaver. A deceased person already, we'd taken rags and stuck it in the chest cavity where there's a lot of bodily fluids that's decomping, and we would use that primarily.
All right, so that's the imprinting stage. Do you then move to different training aids once the dog is imprinted on that scent?
Yes.
Specifically, as it relates to bones, what sort of training aids did you utilize?
We used bones, not just his name, but actual human bones, placentas, the chest cavity rags. The pseudo scent that we did use, it was drowned victim only.
What is that pseudo scent mean?
Pseudo scent is a man-made odor, a tablet. I actually brought some with me.
Okay. Is it something, you said it was drowning victim only, so do you put that into water and see then if the dog can be trained to detect that?
Correct. You would put the tablet in odor or into the water, the pond, the retention pond, the lake, and the tablet puts out the odor of drowned victim. I like to use that way I wasn't creating any kind of biohazard. If it was in a retention pond, I really wouldn't worry about it, but it's easier to do. You drop your tablets in the water, you let it sit for a little bit, and you run your dog on it.
Okay. All right, other than that, do you recall any of the training aids used with bones?
Why I had them, I believe that we used blood also. Bones, blood, pseudo, tissue, the decomp on the rags, placenta, grave dirt, dirt from where a cadaver had actually been recovered from, the fluids that suck up in the soil there, we use that also. And I believe that's going to be all that I used with him at that time.
Okay. Now, you made some reference to the fact that you don't have bones
Correct.
anymore. At some point, was there a decision made by the Orange County Sheriff that that a full-service dog, not a single-purpose dog, would be needed for the agency?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Once that decision was made, what happened to bones?
Once that decision was made with bones, we went and trained and tried to make him a full-service dog, an apprehension dog, commonly referred to as a bite dog, and he didn't make it.
Okay.
The agency then made the decision because they had previously made the decision that they would like me to work a full-service dog. They went ahead and retired him, and he ended up going to a captain. I believe he was a captain at our agency at the time, and that's when Osceola was looking. Sergeant Brewer got him from the captain.
All right. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the Osceola County Sheriff's Office decided they could use a single-purpose dog
Correct.
for the human remains detection work.
Correct. Because at the time, locally sworn law enforcement personnel, cadaver dog-wise, I covered multiple counties. I was it
For how long?
for a while.
Okay. So you're talking about going to Brevard County or Seminole County Lake County, because Bones
Correct.
was the only cadaver dog in the area for a period of time?
Correct. Sworn wise, there were still some search and rescue groups out there, but law enforcement wise, I was it.
So once that decision was made to have a full service dog assigned to you, do you get another
Yes,
canine?
ma'am. Yes, I was still working the bloodhound as well, and then we purchased Garrus.
Okay. And what type of a dog is Garrus?
Garrus is a German Shepherd.
Did Garrus come from the same breeding program that you mentioned as it relates to Bones?
No, they had stopped the breeding program at that point, and we bought Garrus from one of our vendors that we use to purchase our dogs from.
So did Garrus come from Germany?
Yes, he did. He was imported. I believe he'd been here roughly 4 or 5 days when I got him.
Was he a puppy?
No,
How old was he?
he was, I believe he was 20 months, 21 months, something like that. I know his birthday was October 20th. And he will be 9 this October.
Okay. So what happened once you received Garrus? Is he then sent through a program for the full service dog?
Yes, we then start, I believe it was August 6th of 2004. We started a 400-hour school for our base, it's called Basic Patrol Canine Work. You go in there, you teach your obedience, your building searches, area searches, your criminal apprehension, your scent discrimination, man tracking, and that's it. That's your 400-hour school.
Okay. So once that 400-hour school is completed, is Garrus certified to actually do casework?
In police work, yes, ma'am. He's then FDLE certified. We go out and he's evaluated by 2 outside evaluators. And they evaluate him in his obedience, and everything at our evaluation stage is off lead. He does his obedience, routines, hand and voice, criminal apprehension, the control work, the buildings and the areas. He's evaluated and then certified through the state of Florida FDLE wise.
Now, you work with him during this evaluation process, correct? He doesn't get tested by some other handler. That's a team concept.
Correct. You are the only person that works with your dog. When he's tested, you're tested.
After fulfilling these certification requirements that you've described, does Garrus receive additional training in human remains detection?
Yes. Then they like to give him a little bit of break, let him work the road, a break from school, and then we go back to school and he does 160 hours for his basic human remains detection work, cadaver dog work.
And what is involved in that course?
It's the same thing. Same thing we did with Bones. You introduce him to the odor, you imprint him, and then you teach him to work odor, and you teach him his responses. His final alert was different than Bones. I taught him a down instead of a sit.
What does that mean?
A down being the dog lays down at source.
What sort of items did you utilize to imprint Garrus on the scent of human remains?
Same thing as Bones. We used the rags that were soaked in chest cavities to include some placenta.
And once he is imprinted on the scent, what sort of training aids were used with Garrus?
We used the grave dirt, human bones, adipocere, mummified muscle, blood, placenta, burnt bones, the cremated remains from a human. We used human parts to include a leg, a foot, and then pseudoscent again
For drowned
for drowned
victim
victim,
only?
right? He had exposure to another pseudoscent, but I did not train with that. It wasn't in my normal training thing.
During this training process, do you also attempt to, and correct me if I'm using the wrong language, proof them off of other odors that could distract them from what they're trained to do?
Yes. Purposely, you try and proof them and try and think of scenarios that you might run into in the real world at searches. So you want them to work around other stuff, other odors, to make sure that they don't affect with that. Small things that you might not think of. Garris, during his whole career, never had a bone at all, at home, at work, at anything. He never received a bone, whether it was a rawhide bone or anything. I didn't give it to him because I didn't want to teach him that he should chew on bones, especially if we're looking for bones. We trained him around ham. We trained him around ham bones. We trained him about dumpsters. We trained him around gas that you would use in your car, regular gas. We trained him as distractors also with cheeseburgers, with pizza, with decomposing animals. We trained them around where other animal scent was. We trained in horse rings, their training rings. So you, not only did you have the horse odor, you had the horse poo, urine, all the other distractors there. So we purposely trained that way.
All right. You mentioned just horses as far as the animal sense. Would that training process include making sure that Garris in particular wouldn't alert to the scent of, say, dog urine or feces as well?
Correct. And at some of the seminars you go to, we have multiple dogs. There would be 50 dogs there or whatever. And you also have the other dogs near our training fields that urinate on bushes and poles and stuff. And you train around that all the time, and they're not going to alert to that at all.
Now, aside from a training aid or something to distract them, do you expose them to, and I guess we're talking about Garris in particular, did you expose him to different environments, whether that be buildings, cars, rubble piles, landfill, things like that, so that there's a variety of different things that he's exposed to before he actually does police work?
Yes, I tried to expose them to everything that I could think of at the time. I went to the fire department's training rubble. I would call it a rubble pile. It's where they have concrete with rebar stuck through and broken pipes and mains and all that stuff. And I would hide stuff in there to, in my mind, mock a disaster area where I might have to recover a body or search. I put them in drainage pipes. I put training aids in cars, under cars, in fields. About every scenario that I could think of at the time, I would put a training aid there.
Now, when you are training Garris, you know where this scent is hidden, correct?
Correct.
At some point after Garris completes his initial training, does he go with you to specialty schools?
Yes, he does.
In these specialty schools, are scenarios set up where both you and the dog obviously is always unaware, but both you and the dog have no idea where the training aid has been set up?
Correct. Before he certifies and is able to work the calls, he's tested by our evaluator, and those are all unknown finds.
Unknown to you, to you.
Correct. They're always unknown to the dog, but unknown to myself as a handler.
Why is that important?
It's how they evaluate you and your dog as a team before you start working.
Have you heard of cueing or any sort of bias on the part of a handler that could affect the performance of a dog?
Yes, creating the false alert stuff, yes.
All right. What was done with Garris to avoid that situation from occurring?
Generally, you're only going to see creating the false alert or the cueing with your newer handlers. Our department goes at great lengths to try and avoid that. Why are you training them? While you're training them, the trainer with you, is purposely telling you, keep walking, keep moving, don't stop walking to cue the dog. And that's why it goes in stages where you introduce them, you imprint them, and then you start your searches. If I was doing a search of just the straight wall, I would let the lead, and he's on lead, I would let the lead slack in my hand. And if I see he's working the odor, and when he stops, I'm going to keep moving, walking. Well, of course, I'm going to come at a point to the end of the lead. Purposely, I keep moving, whether it is the half moon behind him or whether it's just moving my feet back and forth. And that's what we do to try and avoid and make sure you don't cue your dogs. But those problems are usually only with your newer handlers, your inexperienced people.
Did Garris undergo an evaluation
Yes.
by an outside agency?
He was our evaluator with our agency, but he was not involved in the training.
All right. Well, that was initially.
Initially, yes.
All right.
I'm sorry, you're referring to the school.
Yeah, after his initial evaluation by the Orange County Sheriff's Office, he was certified to do work for the
Yes.
agency,
Yes, ma'am.
right? All kinds of work,
Yes, ma'am.
including the cadaver dog work that you've described.
Correct.
Did he then go to a basic cadaver school hosted by an entity independent of the Orange County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Where did that take place?
It took place in Sarasota, Florida. One of the search and rescue groups had organized for Andy Redmond to come down and his company to come down and host a seminar, a school in Sarasota, and I applied for that and went to it.
All right. Is Andy Redmond one of these individuals who's recognized as a leader in the field of cadaver dogs?
Yes, he is.
So this independent training that Garris received was one conceived by this individual, the
Yes.
training program. How long is it?
And that was a week-long seminar.
Let me have a moment, Your Honor.
You know what? Why don't we go ahead and stop at this point? And then we'll come back after lunch. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to recess for lunch at this time. I hope you enjoy your lunch today. That's all I'm going to say. Any additional instructions on behalf of the state of Florida or the defense?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll be in recess to 1:30 or till the jury comes back. Okay, the state recognized presence of the jury and the defense. Okay, members of the jury, was your outing for lunch okay? All right. All right, you may continue.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'd like to approach the witness with what has been marked as states NR for identification. I've shown this to counsel.
All right.
Have a look at the composite exhibit NR for identification and tell me if you recognize the documents contained therein.
Yes.
What do you recognize them to be?
Canine Garris's certifications, training logs, along with my training experience.
This states that you use NR and composite exhibit for identification of reference.
What says the defense?
Would object, hearsay?
May I see him?
You would also sign improper bullshit.
Hearing judge.
Ms. Burdick, for the record, could you ask them just a few more questions about what this exhibit contains?
I will, thank you. Deputy 4G, you were given just a brief opportunity there to look at the documents that comprise NR for identification. Did you see the first set? Let me get those back to you.
Excuse me. Thank you.
If you go through each one and tell me what it is.
The first is a certification for myself and Canine Garris for completion of the basic police human remains detection training course.
All right, that
The
is one of the courses that you've already explained, what was involved with it, and was, the certificate was awarded at the end of that program.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next document.
The next document is a copy of the memo, which Sergeant David Wade sent to my chain of command in reference to when the dog was his actual certification. It's dated 7/29 of 2005. He was evaluating the dog, and he passed his certification. It's the memo.
All right. Are those maintained as a business record by the Orange County Sheriff?
Yes,
Okay. You are responsible for monitoring the contents of the business record involving Garris,
that is correct.
and that's one of those that is contained therein?
Yes, it is. I have it. In fact, I have I believe the original right here next to me.
Okay. The next document?
The next document is for the original outside course that I went to in Sarasota, Florida. The first one, the basic cadaver search school, which was put on by Canine Specialty Search and Associates. That was dated November of 2005.
Are you the individual responsible for maintaining the business record of the Orange County Sheriff as it relates to Canine Garris?
I am.
All right. Does that document, is that an accurate copy of the documents maintained in the course of business of the Orange County Sheriff's Office?
It is.
Okay. Do you have knowledge as to whether or not the contents of that document were made at or near the time of the event in question? The event being the certification or the training certificate?
Yes, I brought these back and I made these copies for yourself and the defense
Okay. Next
from my
document.
records. Next one is a continuation of the same certificate, just in a different format, the exact same certificate of 2005, Cadaver Search School, November 2005.
Okay.
The next document is the Advanced Cadaver Search School, which I completed in November of 2006, put on by the same organization in Sarasota, Florida, Canine Specialty Search and Associates, hosted by Andy Redman. This is a copy of the certificate that I obtained from that school.
All right. Are you the individual responsible for maintaining the business record of the Orange County Sheriff as it relates to that document reference Canine Garris?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay. Is that an exact duplicate of the original that would have been prepared at or near the time of the certification?
It is.
Okay. Next document.
The next document is Canine Team Certification, dated 12/31 of 2008 for Canine Garris. And then it gives his ID number. ID number is, I'll do it phonetically, November Mike 4805. And it's part of his FDLE certification, copy of his certificate.
Okay. Is that part of the business record that you maintain on Canine Garris for the Orange County Sheriff?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This is part of the examination and evaluation form, the FDLE certification for November of 2006 for Canine Garris with the same canine identification number, November Mike 4805. Next one.
Is that a multi-page document?
I believe so, yes, because this is a CJ Form 83 and the other one's CJ Form 70. This is a single form, and the next one's another evaluation form for 2010, I believe. I'm sorry, that's the wrong date. It's 06 also.
Okay. Is that the multi-page evaluation form for
Yes,
Canine
ma'am.
Garris?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Are those documents maintained by you as a custodian or the person responsible for maintaining the accuracy of the records at the Orange County Sheriff's Office on Canine Garris?
Yes, they are. This is another FDLE form, certification for myself and Canine Garris. This is November of 2007. Same canine identification number, November Mike 4805. It's a multiple page form. Those are all the pages continuous to November of 07.
There are several pages here comprising similar documents. Can you look at those and tell me what they are?
Yes. These are a copy of our training logs that I complete for the dog when I do a training scenario. Set up starting January 11th of 2005, which go through September 6th of 2008. And and they're all his training logs.
His training logs for cadaver only, correct?
Correct. These are for cadaver only.
Are you the individual that makes the entry on the log?
I am.
Are these entries made at or near the time of the event that is being documented?
They are.
Are these records maintained in the normal course of business of the Orange County Sheriff?
They are.
Are you the individual responsible for maintaining the accuracy of this record for the Sheriff's Office?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce NR for identification into evidence.
May I voir dire the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
The records that you have here, you're in charge of keeping them?
Yes.
And this is so you can, if ever called upon to go to court, you can show the judge and the jury that the dog has been trained?
That is correct.
And this is also so you can show the judge and the jury the certifications that this dog has?
That is correct. The outside certificate, you mean?
Yes,
The training log itself?
correct.
Well,
The certificates, I asked you first about the training logs.
Correct.
And as far as the certificates are concerned, it's the same thing. So you need, if you're ever called upon, you can show the judge and jury that this dog is certified.
Correct.
Now, as to the training logs, as far as the training logs are concerned, this has to deal with the times you trained the dog, correct?
The times I trained the dog. I was with the dog training, yes, sir.
Yes. And when this has nothing to do with the actual field performance when you're out on the field, correct?
Real world searches is what you're referring to?
Field performance, when you're out in the field as a police officer, not training.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. The offer is as to the training logs and certificates we haven't gotten.
Sustain.
I have no further questions other than that, Judge.
Any objections to the proffered exhibits?
Yes, Judge. I would cite, if I may, 90.803, Section 6. I think the records are inadmissible under that section.
Sure. Harris versus State, April 21st, 2011 decision of the Florida Supreme Court found that 2011 WL 1496470. I will admit them into evidence.
Exhibit number 144.
May I publish documents from the exhibit admitted into evidence, Your Honor?
You may publish.
Deputy Forgy, when was the first training by Andy Redmond's group that K-9 Garris underwent?
November of 2005.
If I may refer counsel to document dated November 11, 2005. All right. Even though you were undergoing a training by this outside group, did you maintain a training log for Garris?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
All right. Can you explain to the jurors, and this is a telestrator, the information that you put on these logs?
Just read the log myself.
Well,
It has,
just tell us what this information is that you are putting on the log and the reason for it.
I'm identifying who the dog is, who the handler is, and what exactly we're doing, the date, the time, and then what we did that day. Where it has Canine Garris, the date it was 11/11/05, and the time was we trained all day because it was a seminar. The location was in Sarasota, Florida. And then below that is the cadaver searches, the quantities, the search area, the target locations, and if the target was found or not.
Okay. So as far as the requirements of this school that you all attended, is that what you put in the search area? These are the different environments that the dog is exposed to during training?
Yes, that was our search areas, the horse field, the canine training field, a pipe, and when I say pipe, it was a drain pipe, like a culvert where the dog had to go through to find the training aid. A trailer, portable, like a school portable, and gravel. It was mounds of gravel, like a dump truck had gone back there and dumped a mound of gravel.
All right. And then when you write target location on your training log, this is where the cadaver material was ultimately located?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then target found, you make
Target.
indication on there as to whether or not there was the dog missed the target?
Correct. If he had missed it, it would be down below where the section says missed, and he had located all the targets.
All right. Now, down here at the bottom of that matrix, you have the number of searches, and then it says total false alerts to date. Explain what information you record there.
If he was the false alert on that day, I would indicate it in that box. That's what the box is for.
Okay. And then on the next column, you have total misses to date. Is that a situation like we just talked about where the target?
Just a second. Go ahead.
I believe I did. Sorry. My fault. Okay, let's just, thank you. All right, this first box here is where you're talking about the different search areas, the horse field.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then this box is the training locations that you just talked about.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I said circled target found.
Yes.
In this instance, Garris found all these targets.
Correct.
Down here on the document is where you would indicate if there was some sort of alert to something that was not present, a false alert.
Correct.
Okay. The next column is where you would record whether there was something that was there that he didn't alert to, which you've termed a miss.
Correct.
Okay. And then the last one would be the number of fines.
Yes.
Okay. So on this date in particular, there were 8 targets and 8 fines.
Yes, ma'am.
What information do you record on the bottom half of the form?
The bottom half, the weather information. I put the day, the condition, whether it's hot or cold, whether it's clear or rainy, whether it's humid or overcasted, and whether there's any kind of fog. The next box is going to be your wind direction, your wind speed, and your temperature. And below that would be a comment section.
All right. And these are your comments that you've put in here as to the different sort of targets that were used during the training?
Yes.
Okay. Is this the same format that you utilize for all of Garris's training records?
Yes, it is.
If I may approach the witness with what's been marked as states. NS, NT, NU, NV, NW, NX, NY, NZ, OA, OB, OC, OD, OE, OF, OG, and OH.
You may.
You've had an opportunity to review these photographs, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize them?
Yes.
What are they?
They're myself and Canine Garris training while at the 2 seminars in Sarasota, Florida in 05 and 06.
Do each of those photographs fairly and accurately depict what was required, some of the things that were required of you and Canine Garris at these schools?
Yes, they do.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce the referenced lettered exhibits for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections.
They will be received in evidence as states numbered.
And S will become states 145, and T 146, and U will become states 147, and V will become states 148, and W will become states 149, and X will become states 150, and Y will become states 151, and Z will become states 152, OA will become states 153, OB will become states 154, OC will become states 155, OD will become states 156, OE will become states 157, OF will become states 158, OG will become states 159, OH will become states 160.
May I have permission to publish?
You may.
Deputy Forgy, you indicated that the photographs that we're about to look at encompassed Canine Garris's training at 2 different schools.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. We had talked about a training in 1995 in Sarasota. Was there a subsequent training with the same organization?
2005,
What did I say?
95.
I'm sorry, 2005.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
November of 2005 and November of 2006.
Okay. And what was the difference between the two?
One was a basic cadaver dog course, and the other one was his advanced cadaver dog course.
Okay. What distinction is to be made between the two? Why is the second one more advanced? What is required?
Oh, we did a lot more of the distracting, a more proficient and advanced school. Like in some of the pictures, you'll see what they had to go through to pick out the right stuff and the other distractors.
Okay. I'll show you what's been introduced as States 145 in evidence, and ask you to explain which school this picture was taken at.
This is going to be 2006.
All right, let me center it. Maybe we have a moment to try to eliminate the glare. It's from theirs.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, is there a way to, it's the canister lights in the ceiling that are causing the reflection on the surface of the photo.
Maybe right here, if we bring them down all the way. I think the bottom. Down here. And then the light on. Hang on.
Show us, or tell us what we're looking at here, if you would.
We're doing an interior search. It was actually a haunted house that we were using that day. And there's blood back here on a piece of clothing in the corner.
You can touch the screen.
I accidentally did. It's behind him where he's turning and looking. So I'm sorry, it's in front of him. So I'm coloring over the dog right now, but it's where his head is turned that direction in this pile of clothes that's down here in this corner.
All right. Now,
It doesn't work.
are there some indicators to you during this training session that the dog has either a change of behavior or is alerting to
Yes.
something?
You'll be able to see in the other pictures, see how fuzzy his hair is sticking out. I refer to it as like a hackle. It's up, it's high, it's proud. He's turning because of the way the odor is coming out of there, commonly referred to as a head snap. If you see the dog head snap working into odor, we were walking down the hallway if you're looking at the screen from the left to the right, turning into the hallway. I thought he was going to go into this room, but he didn't. He gave me a good hard head snap here, turned into direction, and ended up going back over here and later giving me a final trained alert. The picture was taken right before that.
States 146 in evidence. What are we looking at here?
This was referred to as the bone room within the haunted house. Obvious reasons. There were 2 real bones in this room, and he had to find them. The rest of them are all fake.
Garris had to find,
the 2 real human bones out of all the fake distractors. There was one on the wall and one in the pile that he was at right there.
147 in evidence. What's happening here? Is this the 95 or 96?
05. It's
I
okay.
keep saying the same things.
It's okay. This is the 2005. We're in the middle of one of the horse training rings, a horse training field. And the training aid is underneath this box. There's a couple boxes out there. I don't know what they use them for, horse training wise, but we had our training aid in the center of this. So you would have all the animal distractors throughout the field. And it's an open range search, off lead search. He's turning and starting to work odor. His tail's up. It's fuzzy again. His nose is down.
All right. 148 in evidence. What are we seeing here?
Final trained alert.
And 149, is that somehow different than 148?
Yes.
How so?
Garris would like to find the odor, work the source, give me a final trained alert, and then turn and look at me and make eye contact with me. He always has. And this is him, because those photos were actually taken in sequence. When he was working the odor, he gave his final trained alert, looking at the odor, and then turned and looked at me for acknowledgement.
And documented also in 150 in evidence.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me show you 151 in evidence. What are we seeing here?
A vehicle search, a training of vehicle searches while at the advanced school. Sweeping a vehicle, commonly you sweep them low, sweep them high. That's what we're doing here. You can see how why I explained earlier, why I let the lead loose in my hand, how it's got slack so you're not pulling the dog off of it or stopping or whatever. You leave slack.
$152 in evidence.
Same thing, another vehicle search training. You see his hair on his tail is changing again. He's in odor, but I'm actually going to spin him right here. I'm going to spin him because I thought he passed the door too fast to get to source, so redirect him and you spin right back around and put him back and continue to search. The odor on this one is actually under the rear bumper.
153 in evidence, what is that showing?
One of the training aids, a femur.
All right, and 154, same? Is that a training aid as well?
That's another training aid. It's an upper jaw bone.
All right, 155 in evidence?
Horse training, it's the horse training field again at the seminar. Just shows I'm refining my search, directing.
156 in evidence.
This was the pipe, the culvert that I was explaining earlier. The training aid was at the center of this and they had to actually work to it.
$157 in evidence.
Block searches. You can see his tail. You see his head. He's I would refer to it as fixing to dunk his head into the odor, concrete boxes. See, he's kind of shifted forward because he's come to a fast stop before he could give me his final trained alert. Again, you see the leash is slack, and I'm still moving.
$158.
He's working odor, working another set of blocks, or there'll be multiple empty blocks or distractors in the empty blocks, and one of them will have the training scent source there. The wind was hitting us in the nose that day, so where I started him, he's going to pull me straight past everything right to it.
All right, and then 160, if Garris is successful, he gets a reward?
Yes, ma'am.
And does this photograph to show the type of reward that he gets?
Yes, it was a ball. Handler praise and a ball. That's his reward.
Okay, thank you.
That's a problem with the overhead lights.
Now, during either of those schools, did Garris have any misses?
Yes,
Okay, false alerts?
I believe he had one.
All right.
He had a few misses.
All right. Do you have an explanation that you believe was the reason for his miss?
We had done, on the one day that I'm looking at specifically, we had done 15 searches. We'd worked all day. In the haunted house, he missed 2 small pieces of napkin that had a couple drops of blood in the hallway. But he had located 13 items in that building. And there was 15 items, he missed 2 of them.
Okay. And I had asked you about whether or not he alerted on something that you learned was not there.
Correct.
And what is your recollection about that?
I would refer back to my logs real fast. I don't believe there was. There may have been. In 06, no false alerts. 05, I have 1 false alert on the 9th and 3 false alerts on the 8th.
All right. On the 8th,
Yes, ma'am.
why do you think that happened?
We had 31 searches that day. He was tired.
Regulation, multi-strike.
You can answer. Maybe you did. I didn't hear it.
We had done 31 searches that day. That's the most he's ever done in one day. He was tired. And I indicate that in my log actually also. I typed it at the bottom.
Okay.
He appeared to be getting bored and gave 3 false alerts. Garris finished the search finding the targets with encouragement.
All right.
He was bored and tired.
Now, the next day, you indicated that there was one
On the 9th,
or did I mishear you?
no, it was 11/9. I have 12 searches that day with 1 false alert. Numerous training materials were used. The soil, adipocere, pseudoscent bones, and mummified muscle. I didn't indicate, it was just he just false alerted that day.
All right. Now, do those training scenarios accurately reflect a real-world situation? Would you ever have a dog performing 31 searches in one day?
You would never search that much. Usually when you find, in the real world situation, when you find one item, you stop your search, depending on the item and depending on the search itself.
Now, in addition to these schools, does Garris undergo any sort of regular, what you might call maintenance training?
Yes, he's required to continue his maintenance training, a minimum of 2 specialties a month, and then quarterly, we're evaluated by either a supervisor or a trainer.
All right. How many times between July 29th of 2005 and June 7th of 2010 did Garris undergo a quarterly evaluation by a trainer or a supervisor?
You said in 08 was the last date?
05 to 010.
Oh, I'm sorry.
05 to 10.
"21 times he was evaluated."
And
From-
did you kept training records as to each of those evaluations?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any problems during those evaluations with misses or false alerts?
No, I did not.
Has Garris ever trained in situations where a body, that you knew a body to be present, and then the body was removed, what you might refer to as residual odor, or the odor left by something even though it's been removed? Have you trained Garris in those circumstances?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Do you recall specific instances where that occurred?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury when and the circumstances of that?
The first time was 9/5 of 05. A body had been recovered or located next to a retention pond in the high grass. The gentleman had been deceased for approximately 7 days. I went there and ran it before they had actually removed the gentleman as a training aid. I spoke to the homicide detective prior to it, and I ran it as a training aid. And then I went back 10 days later after the body had already been removed and had been in the natural environment. I went there 10 days later and worked it from 2 different directions to see how we would react with the wind direction change also. That was the first one. And we actually ended up finding 2 pieces that they had missed.
2 bones?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was there a second time?
The second time was 4/4 of 2006, where a transient had been located deceased, and they estimated approximately 2 days. It was just off the roadway, maybe 20, 25 yards into the woods. There was food around. It was a white female. There was food around her. And I asked the detectives again if it was okay if I ran it as a training aid because of the huge scent source. And it was okay. And I ran that one.
Okay. And did you have any problems with Garris missing or falsely alerting on a different location?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
And then the third one was 7/22 of 2007. And that body had been removed from the side of the roadway where it had been discarded. Approximately 10 hours when I ran that one. That was in Osceola County. I got a phone call on that.
All right.
I
You're
ran-
saying 10 hours after the body had been removed? You
10
used
hours
that?
after the body had been removed, yes, ma'am.
And did you have any issues with Garris either missing that area or falsely alerting to another area?
No problems with it at all.
Since 2001, when you said you started doing this sort of work, how many cadaver canine calls do you believe you've had?
Real world calls over 200.
Okay. And in training?
And in training, almost 500. It was 498.
Now, in addition to doing this cadaver work, Garris is a full-service dog, so he undergoes other training?
Yes, he does.
All right. And when you're working, he's working however
Right.
many hours that is a week?
Correct. It's easier just to break it down as, it's 80 hours every 2 weeks.
Now, how is it that you end up being called typically to a scene?
A detective will call me. Sometimes I get called for cold case files because somebody's called in a tip on a cold case, maybe 10 years old, maybe 30 years old. Just something livens up a case, or it could be a fresh case that the detective calls me on, and I get out there. There's been a few calls that I've actually heard dispatched that I thought I could help with. Or I've checked the screen and seen something, like someone called in and said they knew that there was a body located in this area. They had heard little Timmy had been killed and he was back in the woods, and they wanted to let us know. And I'll self-initiate and go out there and see if I can help them in any way.
All right. Is the typical end result of these calls, either you're self-initiated or calls for assistance, that there's no alert?
That's correct. It's typical.
In 2005, did Garris have any cadaver searches in real-world scenarios?
I had no real-world call-out cadaver searches with them in 2005.
Right. How about 2006?
2006, I had 6 calls.
All right. And of those 6 calls, did Garris alert at all?
Out of those 6 call-outs, I had 1 alert.
All right. And what was the result of that alert?
It was a find. I found a deceased person. And I don't know the end result of that. I don't know if it ended up being a homicide or not. I have the case number documented, though.
All right. But in that year, you had 1 alert and 1 find?
1 alert, 1 find.
No false alerts?
No false alerts.
Okay. In 2007?
I'm sorry.
How many real-world?
I had 9 real-world cadaver searches.
Any alerts?
No alerts.
So since there's no alert, no false alert?
Correct.
How about in 2008?
2008, I had approximately 71 cadaver searches with 3 alerts. The first one was 3/24 of 2008, so March 24th of 2008, and that was a find.
All right. What did Garris find?
He found a mandible, which is, the mandible is your lower jawbone with the teeth attached.
Okay. Now, the events of this case occurred in 2008. Let me at least skip over that for the time being. After July of 2008, after July 15th of 2008, did you have several call-outs for suspected grave sites or something suspicious as it related to the disappearance of Caylee Anthony?
Absolutely.
Is that why you went from 9 cadaver searches to 71 in the period of
Yes.
1 year?
Yes, we had hundreds of tips on this particular case, and that's why we went from such a little number of searches to such a large number of searches.
All right. Now, when you responded to these tip calls? Did you see anything that would suggest that there was disturbed earth, that there might have been something in this search location?
Yes. I particularly documented two of these cases that both of them looked like there was a recent shallow grave, indent in the dirt. The grass is not the same. It appears like a shallow grave, small shallow grave.
All right. Did Garris alert to either of those locations?
No,
Okay.
neither one of them.
Were they dug nonetheless?
They were still dug due to the fact that they were related to this case, and they were dug by forensics.
Do you know what the findings were as it relates to those?
Both of them were animals.
In 2009, did Garris have any cadaver searches?
Yes, I had 12 cadaver searches in 2009 with one alert,
Okay, and what was the result of his alert?
a find,
And what were the circumstances of that?
a drowned victim. He was still underwater. He had fallen out, I believe he fell out of a canoe and had not surfaced.
And how about 2010?
2010, I had 11 searches and no finds, or no alerts, I'm sorry.
All right. Garris is currently retired,
Yes.
and when was his last day of work?
His last day of work was a call, and it was September 24th of 2010. He went down on a call.
One of the real-world scenarios that you've described was actually captured on videotape.
Yes, ma'am.
Which one?
That was the first one, the female in 2006. Yes, 5/29/2006, I believe that's it.
All right. And what can you tell the jury about the circumstances of this alert?
A male had called in and said that he had heard that there was a deceased female. I believe the circumstances that he had heard that she had been shot and discarded in a wooded area near a pond on the west side of town. The deputies went out there. There was approximately 5 of them that had gone and walked the woods and searched by the pond and could not find anything. They had called for the helicopter to come out and search the area. The helicopter had since left the area, and I believe they switched crews. I know they fueled up again, but I believe they switched crews and came back, searched the area again when I heard the call. I told them I'd come over and try and help them in any way I could. The helicopter searched again, saw that it had arrived, and called me on an off channel. They said they were leaving again, but please be aware that there was a large alligator in the pond in the area that I was just going out there. So I asked them to remain in the area if they would, to watch the alligator while I searched, because next to the pond, it was a lot of I refer to it as sweet grass, the real thick, real green grass that you get around ponds in Florida, and it's pretty tall. So it'd be easy to go through and fall off into the pond if I didn't know where I was at.
All right. Was this in the evening hours? Was it dark out?
Yes, it was dark.
All right. And so the reason why this ended up being captured by the sheriff's office helicopter is because there was an alligator in the area.
Correct.
All right. You've had the opportunity to review this incident?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The video produced is fair and accurate
Yes, ma'am.
version of the events as they occurred.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce OI for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
We would object. We received no prior disclosure on this at all.
This is part of the public record that they received from the Washington Sheriff's Office.
May we approach?
You may. Okay, objection will be overruled. It be received in evidence as states numbered. Okay, members of the jury, the video is approximately 20 minutes in length. So what we're going to do is go ahead and recess until 5 minutes to the hour of 3, and then when we return, we will publish that exhibit. Okay, we'll be in recess. Thank you. May be seated. Okay, let the record reflect that the defendant is present along with counsel for the defendant. Assistant State Attorney, both sides ready to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. The break gave us an opportunity to determine that Deputy Forgy does not come into view until 15:45 of the 20-minute video. So with the court's permission, we'll start at that portion rather than just the helicopter activity prior.
Mr. Byers, you,
My issue is completely different than
okay?
mystery verdicts. Your Honor, I think the procedure that we are proceeding on is not in accordance with Harris. I think what we are doing currently is we are addressing a matter of law with the jury. The court in Harris clearly outlined what a proper predicate would be laid before an officer can testify under the prongs that were under the three-prong test that was laid out by Harris. I think what we're doing is analogous to holding a motion to suppress in front of the jury. These searches, these trainings, all of these indications are no different than what we would have in a probable cause hearing. If this were somewhat of a drug case on a vehicle search, this wouldn't be done in front of the jury. And I would renew our previous objection. I just wanted to make it clear that when I had previously objected and brought it to the court's attention that this predicate had to be laid, it was so that the court can do this outside of the presence of the jury because they are hearing things that are completely irrelevant. I do not read Harris to be the only case that allows you to bolster your witness. I read that as if, I read this case saying that we need objective standards. Moving forward in this type of evidence, objective standards must be used when laying a proper predicate. These are clearly issues and matters of law that must be done in front of Your Honor, not in front of the jury. And now what the effect is of course improper bolstering, and of course evidence that is irrelevant to this case and to the facts that they are sworn to actually make a determination on. And if we proceed and continue to proceed, we're just making the matter worse. This is a matter of law, not a matter of fact, and does not need to be before the jury.
12 individuals at some point in time will go back to a jury room, and they will be asked to evaluate the believability of this testimony. And one of the things that this jury is going to have to decide is whether or not this particular canine or any other canine is reliable. So the reliability, the dog's training and certificates, the handler's training and certification, the experience and training of the dog all goes to factors that will enable the trier of fact to determine whether or not they want to accept or reject this evidence. Therefore, my previous ruling will stand. Let's return to jury. Okay, state recognized president of the jury.
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense.
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, you may publish the exhibit to the jury.
Deputy Forgy, you've determined that of the 20 minutes contained in this video, that you come into the field of view at what point?
I believe it was 15:45 or 53.
Okay.
I wrote it down.
This was taken from a helicopter?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it any sort of special lighting that was used?
The FLIR system, infrared, works on the heat source.
At the time that you and Garris are performing, do you know where this body is?
No, sir. Or no, ma'am.
Right. Your Honor, may we have permission to start at 15:45?
Any objections from the defense at that starting point?
We just renew all previous motions and objections.
Okay. Now, members of the jury, it is easy for you to view the monitor with the lights on or dimmed. Okay, you may proceed.
Okay, ready? Do you and Garris appear at any point after this?
No.
Okay. Now, the infrared makes it look like this is a flat surface, is it?
No, ma'am.
Can you describe the terrain at that point?
It looks like it was a previous sinkhole, so it's pretty steep decline into the retention pond area. It has a lot of the tall grasses where in the video you see him hopping. I call it deering when they kind of hop because he's trying to smell and jump and pass through the high grass. There's trash all over the place because it's a known transient area. And prior to going down the decline, the small hill to the sinkhole area where the water is, it's a wooded area.
All right. So when you're out of the woods, so to speak, what is it that you can tell us about what Garris was doing on this video to pick up the scent and then ultimately whether or not he gave an alert?
The conditions actually that night happened to be perfect. The wind was out of the northeast, blowing to the southwest, and I happened to just park at the southwest part of the woods. He winded him from the woods section when I gave him his command to find human decomposition. He winded him right away. He drugged me through the woods and then down the embankment. And then when he gets down there into the high grass, he's having to work through the grass, and it's commonly called bracketing. He's working the source. I know he's working the odor. He's definitely bringing me to it, and he's bracketing to get to it. I was having to slow him down. If you saw when he would stop, when he stopped immediately, it's because I held the lead, because I didn't know where the water was, because it was, pitch black down there. I didn't have any light. And then that's when I asked for Chase to turn the light on right after I had stopped him. And then all of his body behavior is there. He goes to his down, and I don't know if you watched, but he turned and looked right at me and made eye contact.
Now, early in your testimony, we talked about another cadaver dog that you had trained, Bones.
Yes.
Prior to Bones' transfer to the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, did you have the opportunity to work him in real calls where he made an alert?
Yes, I had.
Okay. What do you recall of those circumstances? How many were there, first of all?
He had 4 real fines within, I believe it was 11 months that I worked him after school. So there was a total of 4 fines. And the first one was a call that I actually heard, where a person had called in and called the sheriff's office and said that they thought his house dog had brought back a human bone, specifically had teeth to it. I went out there, or I called the unit that was on scene. I said, does it look real or does it look like an animal? And they stated that it looked real.
Judge, you say?
State?
Your Honor, these are the circumstances of his real-world find. They're relevant to whether or not we meet the predicate involving Bones.
Objection overruled.
I believe I left off. Actually, can you read me where I left off?
You were telling the jury that you were trying to determine whether or not the jaw or mandible, whatever was brought back by someone's dog, was real or not.
Spoke to the deputy. He said it appeared to be real. I drove out there. It was in Tangerine, which is northwest part of Orange County, and recognized it immediately as a section of the human mandible. It still had a few teeth with fillings. I interviewed the person that called this in, the owner of the dog, and asked him where his dog normally plays. It's a rural area in the county, so there's woods everywhere. So I could narrow down my search. He didn't know. He said his dog plays all over the place. I deployed Bones from my vehicle on the main street, which was south of his house, and put his collar on and gave him his command to find human remains. And just casted him out, started walking. The wind was out of the north that day, and I happened to be south of it. He pulled me through the backside of a play area of a church, out through a field, and located the lower torso of a cadaver. It had been disarticulated by animals, pulled apart.
All right. You said there were 4?
Yes.
What's a summary of the details of the second?
The second one, a quick summary of it, the gentleman, I was asked to search a house in backyard area. Canine Bones alerted into the garage of the house. The forensic unit did a dig and found a deceased man in the garage floor, buried underneath the garage floor. We went approximately 2 streets over, and it was still part of the same exact case, and he alerted in the backyard near the pool and rock garden area, and there was another deceased person there. It was all the same case, same day. There was, that's 3 of them.
Okay.
The 4th one, I was called to a town on the south end of the county in reference to a sexual battery case. I was called, asked the question of, is it possible that Bones could locate,
Overruled.
if he could locate an item that had blood on it.
Had he been trained
Yes, he had been
in
trained.
that fashion? Okay.
Yes. I don't want to get too much into this, to the sexual battery, but I deployed out there where the area where the lady had said she'd been taken and located a rag that the defendant, the suspect, had wiped off some blood with and discarded, and Bones located that item.
If I may approach the witness with OK for identification.
You may.
This is the report that went with the video that was published.
Yes, it was. 5/29/2006.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce OK for identification into evidence pursuant to Harris.
What says the defense?
Same objection.
Be overruled. You'll be receiving evidence as
State's Exhibit number 162.
Your Honor, at this point, may we approach?
you may. You may proceed.
Thank you. Deputy 4G, were you called to assist in an investigation regarding the disappearance of Caylee Marie Anthony?
Yes, I was.
When did you first become involved in the investigation?
I don't have it on that log. I had to look back to my supplement report.
All right, will that assist you in refreshing your recollection as to the exact date and time?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, may Deputy 4G refresh his recollection with that item?
You may. You may.
Counsel, page 310.
Thank you. 7/17/2008.
Where at?
I responded to main operations, 2500 West Colonial, to be specific, the forensic bays.
you said 7:17?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, at what time did you respond to that location?
16:42 hours.
Just before 5 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have to?
15:31, I'm sorry, 15:31 hours.
15:31. Do you have to make any preparations with Garris to prepare for whatever request is to be made of him?
For the search, I use a collar as an indicator and then give him a command.
All right. How is a collar an indicator?
It's an indicator, it's just a change of, like if I was to put a harness on him for tracking, it's a different tool that you use, and it indicates to the dog he's doing a different job. If I was to put a harness on him and hook him up from the center of his back and give him a command for tracking, it's tracking. If I slip a collar over his head and give him his command for looking for human remains, he knows that's what he's doing.
Based on the training that he's had over the years?
Correct.
So when you arrive at the main operations center, are you given any information about the potential pending case?
Nothing except for general information that I recall. I responded to the forensic bay and met with some of the forensics personnel or CSI personnel there, and they took me out to the bay. They said there was a vehicle that they would like me to look at.
Now, you've been involved in working a cadaver dog since 2003.
Correct.
So at that point in 2008, you had 5 years of a lot of different types of experience, but 5 years working with training aids of human origin.
Overall.
Yes. Multiple scenarios. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would you say that having had exposure to those training aids, that you've had an opportunity yourself to be able to detect the odor of human remains?
Yes, definitely. I can smell it.
Okay. When you get to the operations center, can you smell what you would recognize to be the odor of human remains?
At the facility itself, prior to moving the vehicle out of there, it was pretty strong in the bays. Yes, ma'am.
Do you go into this facility with Garris, or is he somewhere else?
He's in the vehicle waiting.
Okay. Why is that?
I went in to find out what exactly they wanted because I was still, I didn't know very much of the particulars on the case. I went in there to meet with the people to find out what they exactly wanted, and that's when I discovered the vehicle was still in the bays. I asked them to move the vehicle outside.
Why?
Because in the forensic bay, there are other trash cans, biohazard trash cans where the unit that picks up our biohazard trash come and pick up. It's housed in the same warehouse on the other bay, the opposite bay.
Okay. So where did you ask that the individuals present move the car?
I asked them to remove the vehicle from the garage, the bays, and put it outside in the parking lot.
How was that to facilitate or improve Garris's search?
To put it in the open air, to remove it from the other biohazards that were in there, which are also, blood and other evidentiary stuff in the bays, to put it in a clean area.
Okay. Do you have the car sit for any period of time prior to getting Garris out of your vehicle?
It was a short time. I don't recall the exact time, the exact time frame when I let it sit, but it was a little while because I went around and moved my vehicle to the back side of the forensic bays to make it closer for me.
Did you search or perform a search of any sort with Garris prior to going to the subject vehicle?
I swept a car, which was on the west side of the subject vehicle, the white Pontiac. Yes.
Okay. Why did you do that?
I'm guessing it was probably because of training. I just swept the car real fast in front of it, and that's what we've always done in training, is there's always multiple vehicles there. I've never run into it in the real world situation. So I just took him out, swept the next car right next to it, and then went right to the subject vehicle.
All right. Were the doors open or closed on the white Pontiac?
The first sweep around it, they were closed.
Was this a white Pontiac Sunfire that you came to learn was the vehicle alleged to belong to Caylee Anthony?
Yes, it was.
So explain to the members of the jury the sweep that you did of the vehicle once it was moved outside.
I swept the blue vehicle to the right and then immediately went over to the vehicle in question, swept it in a counterclockwise manner. So from driver's side, front bumper area, down the driver's side, around the rear of the vehicle, and then back down the passenger side. I had already spoken to one of the forensic techs and told him that if I needed him to ventilate the vehicle to open anything, I would just tell him, and I would be going counterclockwise, so I would want him to start by opening the driver's door. When he opened the driver's door, just barely click it and move on back to the trunk area. And then if I indicated for him to open the trunk, he'd open the trunk, and so forth around the vehicle in a counterclockwise manner. The first pass, he started indicating in the rear of the vehicle. I could tell he was working something, so when I came back around to the driver's side again, when I was crossing the front bumper while still moving, I asked the tech to open the driver's door.
Okay. And what was Garris's response after the driver's door was opened?
When the driver's door was open and we got to that part of the car, he dove into the car in between the driver's seat and the back seat and jumped back in there, looking to the back seat trunk area, trying to get back in that area. Again, like I stated, that I continued to move. So you don't create these false alerts and stuff. I continued to move. He came back out, working the source. I indicated for the tech to open the trunk. Continued down the driver's side to the trunk area. When we turned down the side of the rear of the trunk was open. Garris jumped up into the trunk.
His whole body?
No, front end. Front end, stuck his head in there. And of course I was overwhelmed at that point because same thing, I'm hitting at the same time he is. I move around, continue to walk. Garris comes out of the trunk with his front paws, comes out of the trunk to the right rear passenger taillight bumper area and gives me a final trained alert. He goes into a down position.
Do you then leave the forensics bay area or the parking lot outside the forensics bay area?
Yes, I loaded the dog back up, and then I left the area.
Were you asked to go to another location that same day or a subsequent date?
Yes,
Okay, same day?
I believe it was the next day, I'm not sure. The Hope Spring address.
What request was made of you at the Hope Spring residence?
They asked me to come out and if I could do a sweep of the backyard. That they had a concern in a couple areas in the backyard and low area that the father was not familiar with.
Yeah, sorry, Judge.
Strike which portion, Mr. Bass? Strike which portion? Strike which portion? Father was not familiar with the area? Sustain. That portion would be stricken and jury is asked to disregard that portion of the statement.
Yes, sir. You were asked to go to the Hope Spring residence to check out some areas that the crime scene techs wanted you to look at,
The detectives, yes, ma'am.
the detectives.
Some areas of concern within the backyard.
All right. So you went there with Garris.
Yes.
Okay. Did you do any sort of investigation in the backyard prior to deploying Garris in that search area?
The detectives, yes, I wanted to look at it. The detectives had a particular area that they wanted to look at because they had been informed that it was,
Without giving us the hearsay information, there were areas in the backyard they wanted you to search?
of concern, yes.
Okay. So in order to facilitate that, you came with Garris?
I went and retrieved Garris from the patrol vehicle and conducted a search of the yard.
Okay. How was that search conducted?
Off lead,
Okay. Was everyone removed from the backyard?
the majority of them, I believe it was Corporal Carden, which was my canine supervisor, was with me. And I don't recall whether one of the detectives stayed back there or not, but I don't believe they did.
Okay. So what commands do you give Garris regarding the search of the backyard at Hope Spring?
His command to find human remains were find Fred. His indicator is his collar. I put his collar on him and give him his command, find Fred, and he goes to work.
Okay. And you said he's off lead.
Off
so you're not having him sweep in any particular direction?
No, because it's a fenced-in yard and it was a controlled area, I kicked him off lead to allow him a free search. And then I could bring him back and direct him to check particular areas of concern. I entered the yard from the northwest corner and started in a eastern directions where I kicked him off lead and let him search the area. We went past a couple sheds.
Okay, let me ask you, is that the gate by the garage?
Yes, on the north side, yes.
Okay. You said you went past some sheds?
There's a couple like Tupperware container sheds. And went past that, then there was an above ground swimming pool continuing to the east from the west side. And then you would turn and there was a area of concern right there at the northeast corner. That was the indentation in the backyard that they had an area of concern they wanted me to check particularly.
All right. The detectives had a concern about that.
Detectives, correct.
Did Garris give an alert in that area of concern?
No, he did not.
Okay. Did he continue on?
He continued to work. He went through, I believe, initially, around the pool. He searched the whole area. The only areas that he gave me any indications and gave me any alerts and a final trained alert was in the southeast corner of the yard, which is near the play area. And there was like a playhouse, a kid's bench, sand, play box area. But it's the southeast corner of the yard.
Your Honor, may I publish 43 in evidence at this time so that the testimony can be further explained?
States Exhibit 43, you may publish.
All right. First of all, Deputy 4G, can you see 43?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Is this the area that you were describing where you got the alert?
Yes, ma'am.
Trained final alert?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I was making sure the witness saw it first. Okay. All right. Can you tell the members of the jury where the trained final alert occurred? You can tell us straight by touching.
Within that circle, in that area. The kids' playhouse and the kids' little sandboxes behind the little bench area or the picnic table. But that's where his final trained alert is.
Do you remove Garris from the backyard at that time?
Yes, I do.
Do you make a suggestion to the detectives there that another cadaver dog come and check the area?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Would that be Bones?
That would be Bones.
What information, if any, do you impart to Bones' handler when she arrives?
Generally, I just give them the general information. Here's the area of concern. Here's where I would like you to do a search. Here's what I've done in that area, aside from what my dog has done. Because I don't want to, like I said, we take great means to prevent false alerts or prevent these things. This is another one of those things. You don't tell them what your dog did. So it wouldn't preempt any of these things. You just say, here's a backyard. I would like you to search it and see if you get any alerts or indications. I've probed these areas, stuck holes in the ground, and no one's been back there for this time frame. Just general information that I give them.
Did Bones arrive?
Bones did arrive.
How long after you conducted the search with Garris did Bones arrive?
I don't recall. It was a little bit because she was coming from Osceola County.
Okay. Were you present during any search that Bones did?
Yes, I was.
You didn't run the search with Bones, someone else did, correct?
Correct. He had been with the other handler for a few years at that point.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
Excuse me.
No questions of the witness at this point.
Okay. Recross as to those issues.
Deputy 4G, Ms. Drain Burdick asked you about your belief as to why the dog didn't alert in the backyard
The second day.
the second day.
Yes, sir.
Other than, well, I don't believe a dead body in the backyard is a disputed issue in this case, but let me ask you this. Are you
Just a second.
trying to explain the question?
I'm going
No.
to object to the commentary by counsel as to what is and what isn't in dispute.
Sustained. Rephrase your question.
Other than that, I guess the easiest way to ask you this is, you really don't know, do you, sir?
What?
You don't know whether Caylee's dead body was in the backyard, or whether this is a false alert, or whether as you explained to the jury, when digging up, it lost the scent. You don't know any of those three.
Right. I couldn't tell you why. I can tell you from experience, I haven't had a problem with it. I can tell you I had a final trained alert in that exact spot the day before. After they moved whatever was on the surface, I did not get an alert at all.
But out of those three scenarios, you're really just speculating.
Out of what three scenarios? You just
Since you
asked
don't
me
know
2
which
days.
of the three scenarios, whether it was Caylee's remains or Caylee's body that was in the backyard, or whether the crime scene investigators had, I guess, scraped up any scent, or whether it was a false alert. You just don't know any of the three.
That's correct. I don't know. I got an alert the first day and did not get one the second day.
And this speculation is part of your testimony today.
Speculation. I testified that my dog alerted the one day, and then they scraped the area, and then the dog did not alert the next day.
My question is, since you can't pick, since you don't know one of the three, you're speculating. You don't know which one of the three it is. So that's part of your testimony, is it not, sir?
Overruled.
It's an unknown factor to me. Yes, that's correct. It's unknown.
And when trying to interpret what a dog is doing or saying, speculation, is it not?
Speculation on my training experience with the dog, absolutely it is. That's part of my job.
And that would include for all searches where there are no remains found.
If there was an alert, is what you're asking me.
Correct, yes.
In every single time he's had an alert besides this case, I've had a find.
Okay, well, we're talking about this case. Let's talk about this case. In a situation where you have the search and you don't have remains, and you don't have evidence of remains, you're just speculating as to which of those scenarios it could be.
At what had taken place in the backyard. Correct, I didn't know.
And in the car as well.
Believe
You don't
the
know
doctor's
what
already
happened. You don't know what
testified.
happened in the car, do
I
you?
believe the doctors testified to that.
You can't testify as to what other people testified. I'm asking you about you. You don't know.
I didn't see to it, no. I didn't see anything in the trunk. I smelt it, clear as day.
My question to you, sir, is you don't know, do you?
I know what I smelt in the car, because you're jumping from the car to the backyard to the car. If you're asking me what I
let me
smelt
make
in the
myself clear
car,
then. Yes, sir.
Let him finish answering the
Let
question.
me make myself clear. As it relates to your dog alerting in that area, when you don't have any remains found, you are speculating that remains were there, or it's one of the three examples that you've already testified to.
Sustained. Compound question.
Yes, sir. Well, as it relates to your searches where there are no remains found, it could be either there are no remains, there were never any remains there, there is residual, or there's residual odor, correct?
to clarify the backyard, that is correct. For the car, to clarify, clear as day, I smelt it.
You haven't been called out to go and smell things without your dog, have you?
No, I've been present with my dog. I've also, prior to being a canine handler, I worked the road and worked many of deceased people calls, dead unattended. So that would be without my dog.
They've never asked you to come out instead of the dog?
Oh, no, they have not. No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
May the deputy be excused?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, deputy. You may be excused, sir.